welcome everyone today who came out, and even those who came early because they didn't have an automated time adjusting machine. And to those of you on the interweb who are tuning in now or in delay time. We just had a reading about misogyny. And it's left the room palpably thick with feeling. Because it's true. It's all true. So then, we have this way of dividing ourselves into us and them. And gender is probably the most prominent, most prevalent, most obvious, which is why I think it's interesting that we are now entering into an era of what some call gender blending. Well, let's get all of that nonsense off the table, because it doesn't make any sense. It's a naked and transparent ploy for people to gain power over other people. And this has been part of the human condition for a long time. Even back in the days when there were indigenous peoples who did not claim land as their own, they were still territorial, and there was still a sense of us and them, and there were raids on other encampments, and usually when those raids happened, there were captives taken, and the captives were usually women. And that was in order to provide, not necessarily on the surface, but under the surface, it served a purpose of providing a genetic variance among the villages and the tribes. So the whole notion of procreation and survival of the species and all of this stuff goes back centuries, eons, and it informs us to this day, but a lot of it is no longer has the same validity or purpose that it may have had 10,000 years ago. And one of the examples of this, of course, is the drama we find often in the workplace today. Any of you ever find drama in the workplace? That's a juicy laboratory for human psychology. And here's why. Because 10,000 years ago or 20,000 years ago, we were potential prey. Humans were prey. We could be eaten by saber-toothed tigers, and often were. And so we developed certain attitudes, techniques, strategies, worldviews, and systems that became embedded and automated in us in order to promote survival. And it served us well because, 10 or 20,000 years later, we're not so much prey anymore as we are the biggest predator on the planet. So we've managed to turn the tables on that. Not necessarily to anyone's advantage, but we've turned the tables. And the workplace is where that dynamic persists most vividly, because we have this meme embedded in our belief system that our job is our link to survival. If I lose this job, I'll be without a paycheck. And if I don't get a paycheck for a couple of weeks or a couple of months, then I'm not going to be able to pay my rent if I can't, or my mortgage. And if I can't pay my rent or my mortgage, they're going to come, they're going to throw me out, I'll be on the street, it's winter time, I'll perish. Now, I'm not saying that we necessarily go through that as a logical progression in our forebrain, but it's a routine that's running in our subconscious. And so whenever we feel threatened in some way in the workplace, we got a dirty look from the boss, we got attitude from a coworker, we got rumors about what's going on with the business, anything that introduces an element of doubt into our workday experience is going to trigger these old routines about survival. And therefore we see some pretty interesting and aberrant behavior in the workplace because it's survival behavior. It's coming out of the id, but it's not something that we necessarily have our conscious mind wrapped around. And I think that points to a lot about human nature. Now, last week, I left you, I dropped a little bit of a bomb on you. And I said, consider the possibility that your personality, your character, your persona, that thing that you present as you in the world, is pretending to be authentic. It's an act. And it's an act that we're not conscious about most of the time, unless we create a practice of being conscious about it. And so what we call reactivity, something happens, a stimulus, we respond, we react, and then later, either a millisecond later or a day later or a month later, our rational mind grabs a hold of the scenario that played out and creates a rationale for how we behaved. Well, now we create a story around it. And the story explains our behavior. And often, the explanation ends there. We don't extend that story to explain the behavior of other people. They're just nasty. Right? And so, what does that say about human nature? And what does it say about our ability to choose and have free will? Bless you. I think if you surveyed somewhere near 350 million people that call themselves Americans, North Americans, United Statesians. What are we anyway? United Statesians? Because we're not Americans, because America is 2 continents, right? But we're United Statesians. I think the vast majority of them, if you ask them, do you have free will? The vast majority of them would say, yes, I do. I can do what I want. They asked Albert Einstein this question many years ago. They said, Dr. Einstein, and again, I apologize for the genetic bias, but this is the way we the English language used to have rules about. They said, Dr. Einstein, does man have free will? And he thought for a moment, and his response was, man can do what he wants, but man cannot want what he wants. In other words, we get desires, we get compulsions, we get impulses, we get wants that bubble up seemingly out of nowhere. And then our choice is, do I act on this or not act on this? That's the limit of choice that we have. And often we don't even have that much choice, because often if the compulsion or the reaction or the response or the automated routine pops up and we behave, then we go into rationalizing it, creating a scenario that makes it seem sensible, logical, and then we call that choice. But is it? In order to have choice, we have to be first aware of the process. Aware of the fact that we are in character almost all the time, and we're lost in our character. Who are you? You meet a stranger and they say, hi, I'm Fred. Who are you? You're going to give your name. That's the first thing that's going to pop out. And you're going to be so focused on saying your name, you're not going to remember he said his name was Fred. You're going to have to ask him again. At least that's what happens with me. You may be different. So we're focused. There's some part of our attention that's focused on our presentation. And it's so focused on our presentation that we're not really with the other person. We've got them on our screen. They're coming through our headphones. They're presenting a visual image. And we're all the time working to come up with our next line. You know, I'd like to have a director follow me around. So whenever I'm in any situation and somebody says something to me, I can just go, line, and have them give me the line. Actually, I do have a director who attends me, and it's always been what I call a gift.
Just so you know, it's the script supervisor who does that?
It's the what?
Lines, the script supervisor?
Script supervisor, I'm sorry. Script supervisor. I have a script supervisor with me, and I've always seen it as a gift. Because and some of you know me well enough to know, you can say almost anything to me, and I'll have something fairly glib that falls out of my mouth pretty quickly. I don't stop and think about it. I don't go, all right, what would be the really cool, creative thing to say here? But there is a script director, script supervisor in there that's got a whole cache full of clever things to say and is very quick at sorting them out and throwing one out when it's necessary. So that my character can get what it wants. What do we want? What does your character want? Character wants to be revered, appreciated, respected, loved, adored, cherished, revered, worshipped. That's the character. That's what it wants. And there's nothing wrong with that. We're not blaming and shaming here. This is a recognition of how it is. This is how we operate. And we're constantly in that mode of presenting to the world in a way that's going to win the day somehow. Now, that may be, for some of us, it may just be shut down, shut up. Maybe you don't have a script supervisor that's worth their salt. Maybe your script supervisor is not very good at it. And so, well, then I tend to just be quiet. I'm a quiet person. I'm shy. I don't offer myself in glib response very often. And that's okay. That's just the variety of the human condition. But there's still character at play there. That character is now playing someone who's shy, retiring, and reticent. Because that's what's going to win the day. That's what's going to make people think, well, there's an enigma. There's mystery there. I don't really know much about that person. So we're always presenting. We're always presenting. We're always acting. What am I doing right now? I'm acting. Line. And this is, again, no shame, no blame. This is the way, years ago I went down this rabbit hole of being, the word misogynist is a good word, but misanthrope is better. Misanthrope is just somebody who just doesn't like people, period, regardless of their gender, their politics, their religion, their country of origin. None of that makes a difference. Just don't like people. And it's easy to do, because people, as Joe Chapa said so eloquently many years ago, people are messy. Sometimes we're slimy, stinky. So it's real easy to go down the rabbit hole finding fault, And of course, for me, one of the curses, blessings that I carry is the judge. And I have said in ceremony, I come fully with black robe and white powdered wig and big gavel, and I carry it with me all the time. And so I start judging other people. I can find the flaw in you in a New York minute. Just give me a second. And so, once you start down that road, then it becomes obvious of the flaws that are inherent among all humans. And then I go, well, if it's inherent among all humans, and I certainly can't blame any individual human for being that way, bring me the damn design engineer. Who designed this mess? God. Yeah, God's a screw-up, and humanity's a failed experiment. Well, I sat in that stew for a while and wrote ugly stories. I started writing short stories about really flawed humans. And then I realized my mood was beginning to darken. I was sitting in this stew of judgment of the flaws in humanity until I started to get depressed. So I said, okay, there's got to be a different way. So I backed up out of that hole and started to look for a different explanation. So here's what I came up with. Yes, it's true, we are all messy. Yes, it's true, we all most of us are somewhat predictable in certain situations. If I know you at all, I kind of know how you're going to respond in certain situations. I kind of know the kinds of things you're going to say, the kinds of expressions you're going to have on your face. We're all pretty predictable. But here's the part that is liberating. And it's the thing we've been talking about in here for months and months and months. And that is, this character is it's a set of programs. It's a set of algorithms. It's a set of codes. The genetics create codes. And some of those genetics are behavior patterns. They're ways of seeing the world. They're belief systems that are passed down from our ancestors. Concepts that were created generations ago that may have served previous generations in some way, but are dysfunctional at this point. So we all carry dysfunction. So let's put the fun back in dysfunction. Once you see that, and once you come to be able to observe, I come to be able to observe my own character in action. And I see the dance he does, and I see the parts he plays. And what came to me many years ago was, what a versatile actor I am. Damn, I got range, man. I got some range. And I found that I was such a chameleon that I'm able to I do pretty fair accents. In fact, it's almost something I have to be aware of or I embarrass myself. If I'm with people who have a certain affectation in the way they speak, whether it's an accent or a speech defect or whatever, I find myself gravitating to a sense of almost imitation. I start talking like that myself. And that can be insulting to some people if they picked up on that, right? But I've always just seen it as it's just compassion. I'm just compassion. And there's some of that in there, but there's also some of, salesmanship. Professional sales training. Day one. The first step in the sales process. Create rapport. Create rapport. How do you create rapport? Professional sales training, day one. You mirror body language. You mirror body language and you do it in a subtle way so it obviously doesn't look like you're mocking, but that's a way of creating rapport in the body language. Why do we want to create rapport? So that the gate opens up so that I can stick some of my ideas over there. Right? So that pretty soon I can start to create a set of dots that, when connected, lead this person to a desirable outcome, a purchase order, or an agreement. Right? So that's the sales process. But it's true in every aspect of our lives, because we're always selling. And I know some of you here say, I never would be a salesman or a saleswoman. Guess what? You are not, but your character is. Your personality absolutely is. Even when you're being quiet, you're selling something. Boy, that landed like a fart in a tin can. You're always selling, your personality is always selling something. And it's selling itself in some way because it wants things. And you know what? This is the cool thing. We all want the same things. I just went to an exercise with a group that I'm studying some of this with, and we had homework of going home and detailing your character, the character that you play, along with all of its positive attributes and all of its negative attributes. And then we all lined up. We got 1 minute to portray our character, to explain our character. And we went through a dozen people, and at the end of the dozen people, everybody in the room went, damn, I identified with all of that. We all want the same things. We all develop similar strategies. Culturally, people who are in a similar culture develop culturally similar ways of achieving those getting the purchase order. You're okay. This one I'm not sure about, but you're okay. You're okay. I think. Yeah, you're okay. So that's what we're doing. It's this incredible puppy pile of looking for acceptance. Because, in the tribe, what's the punishment for people that are irreconcilably evil? The banishment, exactly. So none of us want to be banished. That's the fear that drives us. That's the prehistoric, primal fear that drives us. We don't want to be banished. We want to be accepted. We want to be revered. We want to be honored. We want to be loved. We want to be embraced. We want to be safe and useful. We want to be useful. We don't want to be irrelevant. So we develop all these strategies, and that's okay. That's the personality in action. We all have it going on. Our personalities we're like a great symphony orchestra. Our personalities are our instruments. So some people would say, I'm a trumpet. That's okay, I'm a trumpet. Maybe you're a timpani. Maybe you're a flute. Maybe you're just a chime. Maybe you're cymbals. Maybe you're an oboe. But you're all part of the symphony, and you're all playing a score that you didn't write. It was written for you by your ancestors and by the mechanism that takes your experience and integrates it into this system of music that the ancestors created for us. Now, let's take the pre-written symphony and let's advance it. Let's make ourselves a jazz big band. In other words, we're still going to play certain scores to keep us all in time and in key and all of that. But we're going to offer you the opportunity to play your own tune. Your tune, not somebody else's tune. What's your tune? What's the part of you that makes your heart beat? Do you think about systolic, diastolic, systolic, diastolic? Do you think about making your heart beat? Most of the time, do you think about breathing? Do you think about digestion? But it all happens, doesn't it? Who's running that show? There's, we see ourselves so in such a limited way. We're this personality that lives inside this bag of skin, and everything outside of us is other. But what if we saw no boundaries? What if we saw all of it as the great I am? Not Gene is, because that's just, we've seen where that narcissism leads. We're getting that on a daily basis, amplified and illuminated. But what if that I am that makes our hearts beat and makes our digestion happen and makes our blood flow and changes our blood, and all of that stuff that goes on without us figuring it out and making it happen? What if we were able to bring the wisdom that keeps all of the hearts beating and all of the lungs moving and all of the blood coursing and all of the nervous system working? What if we brought the wisdom that controls that into our experience of life as I am, and I am all of this? The Gene part of me, the ego, the story, the actor, is just my instrument. It's just a trumpet. I can lay it down and it'll be inert. Or I can pick it up and I can play music that's being created in the present moment by a wisdom beyond my ability to even comprehend. That's what's possible. But in order to play in ensemble that way, I need to be doing two things at once. I need to be expressing through my instrument that which is coming through to be expressed in this moment. And I must be listening to what you are playing so we're not at odds. And if we can all play and listen at the same time, and this is my experience of this because this used to be a practice that I engaged in on a regular basis years ago, and I don't know why I've let that get away from me, because I want to recreate this. It's the most powerful spiritual practice I've ever engaged in, is playing music with other people with no tune, no agenda, no song. Somebody just starts, and it can be a bass line, it can be a drum beat, it can be a melody line on a guitar, it can be somebody reading Rumi. And that starts, everybody finds their part. And if everybody's listening as they're playing, you start to tune in to a bigger vibe. You start to tune in to what I call the muse energy of the moment. And when everybody locks into that, what comes out of this ensemble is miraculous. And first we doubted it. We thought, well, we're just not really hearing it right. So we started recording it and playing it back and going, my God, it really was amazing. So this is the capacity that we have. Once we recognize that what we've been identifying with is merely our instrument, and that there is a maestro that sits behind that instrument that is waiting to express itself as you, as us, as I am. So that's the invitation. That's the invitation to mastery. And mastery is the simple ability to recognize what's I am and what's an artifact. So that's the invitation. Begin or continue that exploration. The more attention you put on it, the more facile you'll become at it. Adept your rendering of the maestro will be. So, bless your hearts. Thank you for listening. And Mrs. Drapkin, I love you wherever you are.
So maybe we can do it? Can we do this orchestra right now without